Welcome to the Axiom Podcast. But this episode's a little bit different because we are not saying the Axiom Podcast anymore. This is now Grow with Purpose. And I have in the studio with me Doug Pohl, who's a dear, dear friend, guy I've known for a long time. And we wanted Doug to be on this episode where we're rebranding the podcast as Grow with Purpose because Doug wrote the foreword to the book of the same title. And so as our team was brainstorming what should the title of the podcast be going forward, Grow with Purpose was the obvious choice, and Doug was the obvious first guest to have. So welcome, Doug. Thank you for coming.
I'm honored. Thank you, Joey.
Well, you should be, because you played a huge role in my professional life, my personal life, and the book was just a small measure of that you blessed me with. So you've been on the podcast before, and we've talked about your role as a business coach, a business advisor, as a C12 chair. And so I wanted to invite you back as we kind of maybe tell new listeners or people who've been listening to the podcast for a while, but maybe haven't listened to every episode. And the early ones are really bad, right? That's the thing you realize.
Right. When you go back and go,
yeah,
boy.
You do something for a while, you go back and look, you're like, oh, I was really bad back then. And then you realize how good you thought you were, right?
Right.
So it's just a reminder for me now, as good as I think I am now, just wait 10 years, I'll realize how terrible it was. But that's part of the growing process. But wanted to just have you on for you and I to have a conversation about how Axiom got here, because you've been such a big part of Axiom and the Brannon family. So I appreciate you coming in to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I remember sitting downtown Bradenton up in one of your first offices, and you drawing on the window, and here was Kristen and I beginning to start our new venture into business. And those are some of my first memories of you and Axiom, were drawing on this gigantic window and going, wow, where are we going? What are we doing? And, relationship and business with you.
Yeah, that was a great office. It was this weird kind of triangular shape, and two of the walls were all windows, and one of the walls was kind of my desk was against that one. So we really had no choice other than to use the windows as whiteboards, because we didn't have any wall real estate. We're getting a whiteboard, and it was really cool. Everybody loved it, but what nobody realized is that if we didn't take a picture of the window before it got dark outside, we'd have no idea what was up there on the windows until it got light the next morning. So I got really...
You work with what you got.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But it looked cool, not exactly as functional as it needed to be. But going back, like, you were part of that, and I haven't really prepared you for any of this. As you said, I just want you to come in and let's talk about this. But going back, like, what have you seen in terms of Axiom and Joey then versus now? Because it's been 20 years. That's the other thing that we should say, is we're rebranding this podcast and going through this. We've been going through this transition over the last year, rebranding a lot of the stuff internally, new logos, revised name, because it's been 20 years.
Right.
So I would just like to hear your perspective. What do those 20 years look like?
Yeah, there's several things that come to my mind, personally and as a business. But personally, just watching you grow as a leader, as a brother in Christ, as a friend, so many things, watching you grow in, and the coachability piece, the desire to learn. You're a book, just pour it in, and how can I learn and grow myself? To do what? To hand off to others. I've loved that about you. Growing in learned experience, not just experience, but as you gather stuff and as you begin to coach others and you're leading other people down this path, you're passing that stuff along. And as you're going through and learning a hard lesson, you know what, we're going to pivot on this because of that hard lesson I learned. It's going to be different as we move forward. So as a leader there, watching, the little boys, and then introducing Annalise into the family side of things and saying, wow, here we go.
You're really going to do this again now, 10 years later? Yeah.
Now you've got a daughter coming in the picture, and we love Annalise. But watching you grow in that, as a leader and as a man and as a father, as a husband, even just recently, with the passing of your father, and watching you walk through that chapter, a very, very, very difficult season, but having the opportunity to watch and pray with you and walk with you through that, I want to say praise the Lord as I watch you continue to grow as a man.
Well, thank you.
On the business side, it's been such a joy to watch that process take place. And as you grow as a business, it's now, again, as you started really, I'll say solopreneur, but from solopreneur to truly entrepreneur and visionary, and not just, okay, I've got these great ideas, I've got to carry them out myself. Not anymore. And again, as you've grown the team, pouring yourself into these leaders that I've watched over the years, and I've got to coach and work with some of these leaders, top drawer, great people that God has blessed you with in your business, and you've continued to grow them into better leaders, and not just better leaders, but better men and women. And that's, again, I think what sets you apart, and maybe not even as you think about this or as you hear this, but you're not just a business expert, you're also coming at this from an eternal perspective. And your stewardship, I know you hold this in your heart and your mind, is you have a stewardship responsibility with people and leaders. And those that God's brought around you, you've continued to steward with excellence.
Well, thanks. I'm going to invite you on the podcast maybe once a month. This feels really good. No, I appreciate all those. I mean, I want your perspective because, I think one of the things that happens with business owners is it's interesting when you look at like your Facebook reel, right? And it's like, this happened 7 years ago. And you're like,
right.
Oh my gosh, that seems like yesterday, or it seems like a lifetime ago. And I think we have a very tenuous grasp on timelines. Like things,
very true.
They seem farther away, they seem closer. We forget a lot of stuff, but every once in a while something happens that kind of snaps your focus back, and you kind of have a better perspective on what has actually happened. You just mentioned one, which was that meeting in the office, where we were whiteboarding what your next chapter is going to look like. And now I remember that like it was yesterday, right? Yeah. But then I think about all the things that have happened since then. And I think that one of the things that you get older, I'm 52, you're a few years younger by the timeline, but we both know metabolically you're like 10 years my junior because you're in incredible shape.
The actual timeline, I'm a few years older, but I guess
you're late 30s.
I've got to keep the challenge for you going. Yes, so my metabolic age is quite a bit younger than you, Joey.
Quite a bit. For those of you who don't know Doug, he's quite the athlete. But we grow in business, and you start looking backwards, and you're like, well, like you said, it's not just everything's grown, right? I'm not the same. I don't have the same perspective on marriage that I did 20 years ago. I certainly don't have the same perspective on parenting because I have a 20-year-old, right? So it was just literally like 5 months, 6 months after Andrew was born is when we started Axiom. So I didn't know what I was doing on either front, right? I didn't know what I was doing as a father or as a business owner. But so much of, we talk about this. So you're a C12 chair, and we're going to talk about C12 on a different episode and really hone in on that. But one of the things that C12 talks about a lot is that there are no silos, right? It's not like you have your personal life, you have your family life, your business life, your social life. Like you're one person doing all of these things. There are different roles in your life, but you're the same person. And so as the person grows or as the person falls apart, like your business is going to be impacted by that the same way your marriage is. So if you grow as a person, your marriage is going to grow. If you fall apart, if you succumb to addiction or have a big health issue and your body's literally failing you, lots of things are going to be impacted by that. So the story of growth really it should be the story of growth throughout your life. And it doesn't happen unless you have people the people who are standing by you today, if those are the people who were standing by you when things got really bad, particularly if those are the people who pointed out how bad things are, right? Pointed out your blind spots.
Yeah.
Those are the people that are responsible for a lot of the growth. And that's one of the reasons that's the reason you're on the podcast, is because you have been kind of that constant presence. So
thorn in the flesh, did you say?
A little bit. But at I may regret asking this question. It just came to me, but I'd be interested to hear, maybe air my dirty laundry in public. Like, you've been present. Certainly I have blind spots now. Hopefully there are fewer than there were 20 years ago. But like give the audience a glimpse of what that looks like, to be that person who is going to say, like, these things are bad. Is there an example in our relationship you can think of when that happened that you would?
I don't want to say it too
I would
quickly.
be comfortable with you sharing. Maybe that's the caveat.
This conversation is being recorded, so
we can edit out and post. No, we won't do
Which
that.
one shall we speak of? No, I'm thinking back. There's one that always comes to my mind, Joe, and you may or may not remember this one. But when we were out at the Dayspring together, and we were at a Dayspring, we were actually doing a 1-to-1.
Yep.
And I was sharing with you a profile, a psychometric profile, and just helping you understand, like, one of the first steps of leadership is self-awareness. And when you can begin to be self-aware, which many leaders just aren't, or if they are self-aware, they go, well, you better get to know who I am and rock and roll with my style, or else just leave the team or leave the bus. And that's not where you are. But as we got together, you're a type A, and that type A was coming out in your relationships. And again, we can look at, from the marriage perspective and other places. And I remember walking through that with you, and there were some real moments for you to kind of grasp, like, who you are as a leader. And instead of being shamed by that or being like, oh my gosh, I don't have much empathy, and I'm really hard on people, and I don't come across as I should come across, you took it like a champ. And I remember that time to know where you were there compared to where you are now. And again, there's years in between that, but that's one example of how I've watched you grow in empathy. You show more emotion, and not that you're, a weeping, crying, oh my gosh, but you have more. And empathy, guys, is just being able to connect with the person across from you in an emotional way, and not going, well, that's too bad. You made your bed, you got to sleep in it. That's not what I've watched you grow in. You've really expanded your personality style to accommodate others around you, instead of saying it's my way or the highway. And that's one of the greatest attributes that I watch in growing leaders, is when they are able to do that. Many leaders can't do that, and you've done it.
Well, thanks. And now I know, like, it sounds like your counsel to me in that moment maybe pushed me overboard, because now I cry at every Hallmark movie. I'm an emotional wreck and worship on church every Sunday. So thanks, Doug. I appreciate that.
Sure.
But it's funny. I remember being at Dayspring. I remember us walking around the property. And if you don't know, Dayspring is a Christian retreat center here in Bradenton, Florida, right across the north of the Manatee River. Beautiful, beautiful spot. It's one of those places where you just think, special things happen here.
Yeah.
There's obviously a spiritual presence here that can be felt. And so you invited me out, and we just kind of walked, which is one of our favorite things to do. I'd much rather do a one-to-one walking. Unfortunately, this time of year, that means you and I would have to be, like, kitted out and
Right.
ready to sweat out 2 or 3 pounds of water. But I don't remember so much the conversation, but I do remember it did not feel good. It really stung, right? But I also knew that you don't say things lightly, and when you sting me, it's always in a way that I can hear, which is it's one of your gifts, and it also goes to, like, you're willing to invest the time to build a relationship so that you have a platform to be heard from. Which is something that I've learned from you, that now I try to teach all of the advisors who come to work at Axiom, is like, you have to keep your seat at the table long enough to be able to be heard when you're telling the truth. Like, truth is one of our core values. Say the hard things, but you've got to earn the right to be heard. And that means you got to be at the table long enough to build that relationship. So I learned that from you. It's something that you're really, really good at. But I was also thinking, there was a time when you shared a hard truth with me, and it may be the same meeting, but I think it was in my office. But we were looking at a profile, whether it was a Myers-Briggs or I think it was pre-reach. I don't think that you were doing that yet. But you looked at, or maybe it was some interviews you did with my people, and you came to me and you said, look, the way you're leading right now, I'm paraphrasing, but you essentially said, you're not going to be able to build a team. This is not the profile of a team builder. And I was, a driver like you. That's why
Mm-hmm.
we get along well, because we kind of are the same person sometimes. But I was ambitious and wanted to grow the business, and I felt like, well, if he's telling me I'm not a team builder, then none of that's ever going to happen, because I was already working 60, 70 hours a week, and revenues weren't going up. It just seemed like I was working harder to spend more money on overhead. And revenues might have been going up, but the bottom line wasn't.
Yeah.
And it was like, man, okay, is this the end of my dream to have a bigger business? And then it was just kind of like, but the way that you said it was not, you're never going to be able to build a team. You essentially said the person you are now is not a team builder. So what do you have to do to be a team builder? Right. And it was just like, and then it was kind of a process of like, well, you have to be more interested in the team than you are yourself, right? So what does that look like? And just, man, you know me, like the reason I was drawn into consulting is because I get to fix problems, right? Which is great if you're an HVAC technician or you're a consultant or you're, it's not great to be a husband who likes to fix problems. It's not.
We've both got plenty of stories there.
It's not great to be a boss who just wants to fix everybody. Because nobody wants to be fixed, right? They want to be cared for. They want to be appreciated. They want to be valued. They want to be able to come in and do work that they find meaningful. And if they're only being told, well, you're just not doing that right, then not a very fun place to work. And so I had to slowly learn. And you talked me down this road multiple times, where we'd be talking about specific employees on the team that I was struggling with, and you're talking me off the ledge. And it always came back to some flavor of, well, how much time are you spending with this person? Right? You can see their work product, or you can hear about their work product,
right?
And you're not happy with that, but how much are you actually seeing them, hearing them, talking to them? And I think it was out of work with you that I really went head down one day. I remember having read about one-on-ones, and I can't remember the author. I probably should, because we should have been attributing this person for the last 10 or 15 years, because we totally ripped off the idea.
Yeah.
But it was essentially like one-to-ones, very simple, two question agenda, 1-1. How are you doing? Stop, shut up, let the person tell you how they're doing. And then 2, what's my job for you as your leader? What do I need to be doing for you over the next 30 days? And so I just finished one of those. That's right before we met.
Okay.
Carrie, who's been on the team for, she's going to kill me, 11 years, 12 years. She's the longest serving member on the Axiom team right now. Phenomenal team member. And we just finished her 1-to-1. We probably spent an hour talking about the first question, an hour talking about the second question. That was 2 hours I didn't think I had to give when you and I were talking, and you told me this is not the profile of somebody who can build a team. And it's interesting, and I want to hear if you've had this experience with other people, because you do a lot of coaching and you do a lot of advising. The thing that I did not think that I had time for or that I was interested in has become the thing that there's nothing else I would rather be doing. Like, it's absolutely the favorite part of what I get to do.
Yeah.
How often does that happen? Tell me I'm a unicorn and I'm special. I like hearing that. But if that's not the case, like, I think that's probably pretty common, where there's just a blind spot. For me, it was not understanding that leadership takes time.
Right.
And if you're not willing to give it, then, okay, you just have to settle for the fact that you're not going to be a team builder.
Yeah.
What are some other areas where you found the thing that people didn't think that they had it in them has become the thing that they maybe believe might be their superpower?
And you don't find out about that, by the way, until you listen.
Yeah.
I sat across from a mentor probably about a month ago, and 83 years old. You'd know the name if I dropped you the name, author, speaker. And I got to sit across from him for 45 minutes, Joey, and like I was in heaven going, this is amazing. I get to ask him anything I want. And I said, tell me about your quiet time. Like, what does that look like for someone who's 83, you've been walking with the Lord for a long time? And he goes, how much do you learn when you talk? And I went, you're setting me up for something here, right?
Well, I'm a verbal processor.
Right. So I went, Not much, typically. And in that approach, as you work with others and you begin to listen and you begin to pour into and you give other people a platform to share, what happens? You begin to build chemistry. You and I, because we are drivers, we are type A, we run by people instead of running with people. And that's something I've had to learn. Hard lessons. I look across at my twin brother. We do share DNA someplace in our background, I'm pretty sure. We do have that common nature just to go, let's solve the problem. Yeah. Let's get to the source. Let's blow by this relational stuff. And I'm finding out, again, over the years through many difficulties, that that's not how you win over both an individual or a problem. And when you can do those things together, wow, that builds culture, that builds team, that builds chemistry, and investing that time into people, meaning the things like you're talking through. How are you doing? I just had one of those before I came here today, and it was an hour and a half, but it was probably 30 minutes of just listening and asking questions about personal life, how that's going, and how can I pray for you? And there was some business, for sure. Yeah. But my care and my empathy are on high as I'm walking through now these situations with other leaders. And what that does, it creates a cohesion and a cohesiveness on a team and with me as an individual, because I do truly care. And now I'm slowing down enough in my processing to allow that chemistry to take place between leaders and people that I love.
Oh, it's, you talked about listening. You are I'll just say you're a world-class listener.
Oh, thank you.
And I know this because you and I have been having one-to-ones as part of our C12 relationship for, I've been in C12 for 17 years. You've been my chair for 10 years. So for 10 years, you and I have probably had somewhere on the order of 100 to 120 one-to-ones. And so my wife knows, Josie knows, because she sees my calendar. She gets very excited, by the way, when I have a one-to-one with Doug. I think she thinks you're just going to let me have it, right? Like maybe she's got a direct line to Kristen, and she's like, make sure Doug asks Joey about this.
Right.
But when I come back, she knows that meeting's happened, and typically I'm getting home late, right? Because you and I have,
always
gone way over,
Yeah.
And she's like, so how'd it go? I'm like, oh, it was great. We talked about this and this and this. And she goes, well, how's Doug doing? And I'm like, I have no idea. Because all you did was ask me questions and let me talk. And, what I learned from that experience, and I've learned from you, and I'll talk about a bigger issue of learning from others, is like I came away from those meetings thinking Doug is so gifted at what he does. And I am in such a better place having spent those 2 or 3 hours with him. Like, how does he do it, right? And then I realized when Josie would say, well, how's he doing? And I'm like, he probably talked like 15% of the time. And, I was like, I'm coming out of this, my day job, coming into these one-to-ones, wearing my consultant hard hat, right? Where it's like, hey, Mr. Consultant, I'm the client. Here's all my problems. Tell me how to fix these, to diagnose what the real problem is, come up with a plan, come up with a solution. And this goes all the way back to CPA days when I was running a CPA practice of like, hey, here's all of my financial questions or my tax questions. Yeah. And CPAs have this, I can say this because I'm a recovering CPA, that, we have to always have the answer. And that's the exact same mentality I carried into my consulting work. And then I sit across from this guy who's just world class at what he does, and I realize he hasn't felt compelled to give me a specific answer on anything, right? And that part of that is just a coaching gift, but also a coaching discipline that you've worked very hard on and have invested very heavily into. But it's taught me that when I'm spending time with a client or with one of our Axiom team members, that to be really good at what I do, I don't have to be a great consultant. I just need to be a good Doug Pohl. I just need to be a really good listener. I need to be listening for the things that aren't being said. And then maybe just a little bit of help. Well, can you tell me a little bit more about this? And And that's a skill set that I've learned. Like I've read books on coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of it stuck, but I've been coached for 10 plus years now by a guy who's really, really good at it. And it's made a huge influence on just taking the pressure off to, and I guess maybe to oversimplify this, is like, do you even care?
Yeah.
You know, if I care about the person, I'm not interested in fixing the problem. I'm interested in how the person's dealing with the problem.
Yeah.
So I would just say I learned that in the school of experience, you know, sitting in Doug Pohl's classroom. So thank you.
And thank you. First of all, I'm super grateful, honored, and praise the Lord for what that's, because you know me well enough, Joey, that there's a lot of things I don't do very well. And having that scope and that purpose personally for me that God's just put in me and said, this is what I want you to do. That was probably 15 years ago. And have been able to hone in on that skill and develop that skill and work hard on that skill for sure. So don't ask me questions about, you know, these other 14 areas, but man, when we can get in and zero in on coaching and developing leaders and being that for somebody else, I love doing it. It's not an energy sucker. It's an energy gainer for me.
Well, it shows. The other thing that I wanted to share with you as you were talking is that I've watched you for, you know, those 10 years in C12. And if you're not, like I said, we're going to talk more about C12, but just for the uninitiated, it's a group of Christian business owners. And the thing you have to understand is there's a lot of diversity around the table, not in the, you know, the political sense of DEI, but different stages of life, different ages, different businesses, industries, different size businesses, different number of years in that business, and different family backgrounds, different faith backgrounds, denominational backgrounds. It's really like you walk into this room and, oh, these are all business owners. And you're like, how? There's not a freaking common thread between any of these people right. except that they own businesses. And there can be a tendency in the business world. We run into this with clients, which is if you haven't built something bigger than I have, then I don't have anything to learn from you. And I've watched you navigate that space, and I've seen, you know, that kind of attitude maybe come into the room, maybe for a first meeting or the first 6 months worth of meetings. And it's kind of like, well, I run a 200-person business. What am I going to learn from from Joey, who's leading a team of 5 or 6 people, right? And I've seen you just kind of steer those people, sometimes with kind of words of encouragement or insight toward this attitude that I best heard expressed at GLS back when Bill Hybels was kind of the face of it. And one of the things that he would start off his keynote presentation that he gave at the beginning of every GLS summit, Global Leadership Summit, was, you know, some of us are business owners, some of us are leaders, some of us are pastors, some of us are lay people. And you're going to hear from speakers who fit all of those descriptions. But we here at GLS believe that if we're humble, we can learn lots of things from just about anybody, right? And that was the first time I kind of heard that expressly articulated, but I've watched you do it and encourage people to have this posture of humility and learn from people that they might dismiss just because of background or pedigree or business size. And be like, man, that I learned a ton from that person. And the reason I bring this up is because we have a dear friend of mine who's your two's named Devin Dash, phenomenal Axiom team member for years and years and years. Now he's in full-time ministry. And I remember coming out of C12 one day, and it was probably maybe a year or two into Devin's tenure at Axiom. And he was young and he was green, but he was incredibly intelligent and he was incredibly relational. He just had a gift with people. Oh, yeah. And I remember we would walk out of meetings and he would be like, did you see what was going on with so-and-so? And I'm like, I think they're off. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? Right. And he was just so tuned in to people. Yeah. And I remember coming away from a C12 meeting, and I had the next morning I was going to be spending with Devin. And I just made a commitment to go to school. You know, I was like, he's the teacher. I'm the student. Yeah. I'm going to watch this guy. I'm going to listen to him. I'm going to learn how he's so good at some of the things that I'm not good at. And I'm going to look for places where he's excellent that I'm not. And when I open myself up to that, I learned a lot. And I would start to ask him questions and just kind of put myself in the co-pilot seat instead of the pilot seat.
On.
And then that has just continued and carried on. I started that with Devin, but now with Carrie, there's whole areas of the administrative side of the business that I'm like, Carrie, how do you get this done in the way that you do? How do you make these things happen? And everybody seems to love you for holding them accountable to it, right? And but I think that's something that you have done a great job in C12 of getting like 12 business owners, maybe 2 or 3 of whom are going, I mean, I've built a business that's 10 times that guy's size. And by the end of the day, they're like, oh man, this was really good.
And I think one of those secrets is I know their secrets. So I could pretty quickly go, you better watch it right over there, because I could bring something up that would be, got it.
You texting him under the table, this one's for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, how have you seen that show up, or have you seen that show up in maybe the one-to-one coaching where people are like, they can get to a point where there's, for me, just to be honest, it was like an ego switch got flipped off. And it was like, it's okay, right, not to have to be this way. You can just be humble, humble yourself, don't have the answers, admit you don't have the answers, and then see what happens. Do you see other leaders go through that, and what's the before and the after?
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple of stories that come to mind. One would be of a leader, super awesome leader, love him, getting to a point where in that leadership arena, as I was coaching alongside of him and watching how things worked within his business, he would have 1,000 words when he could have 100 words. And as you're
I think
around
I suffer
that.
from that disease too sometimes.
Sometimes that can be the case. But I remember going to lunch with him. I'm trying to remember if it was after a 360 that I had done with him, or maybe it was some employee feedback, and they were just like, can you do something, with
That's
that?
bad
like,
when that team members are,
Yeah. And there's all sorts of things that come along with that, efficiency, and are you really listening if you've got to be talking all the time, and all of that. So I'm like, how do I put this into a format that he's going to understand and he's going to walk away with the truth, but all at the same time, I love him, right? I love him as a leader, and I love him as a person. So I came across with the acronym WAIT. Why am I talking?
Ooh, I like that.
And I just slid that across the table to him, and I prepped it up enough, and he knows enough that I love you, and I'm also going to share something with you today that's going to be it's a leadership axiom, honestly, and being able to do that. And he looked at that, and he kind of had that look of like, I'm not sure if I should be hurt or if I should be, but he took it like a champ. And then again, giving him a tool, practically speaking, that can say, why am I talking? Okay, I need to be aware of that. It was a blind spot for him. And then watching him continue to learn and grow and change with that in a C12 environment, when we're with other people environment, and asking a question instead of talking. All those seem like normal or natural things for most people, but they're not when they're blind spots. So my role and my job, and this isn't what I do for free. So as you pay me as a coach to come alongside of you, great coaches are going to challenge you. Great coaches are going to point things out with you and for you that are going to help you grow and develop. If I'm not doing that, I'm not doing my job. And my calling. That's really what it gets down to for me. So if I ever question, oh gosh, tough conversation I have coming up, not only are you paying me for this, but this is what I'm called to do. And I've built enough relationship and have these relational deposits with these leaders that I get to work with, that truth and grace intersection goes well enough because I've had that opportunity to pour into them. Very rarely will I take somebody who's brand new in my environment from a coaching perspective and be the doctor. Hey, we've sat together a couple times. I've had a couple one-to-ones. I've watched you in your workplace, and let me tell you what you need to do. Very rare. It comes out through the question perspective. It comes out through seeking. It comes out through listening first and gathering information.
Have you ever, like those conversations require courage to step into, right? Have you ever demonstrated courage and regretted it? And it's kind of a rhetorical question, but I'm just thinking through. I'm thinking of the times when I have not had the courage to confront a client or a team member about something. And it's an integrity issue, right? Yeah. Nobody knows that you failed to do the thing that you knew needed to get done. But you do. And when you put your head on the pillow that night, that's what I go to bed thinking about. Yeah. It's like, another week went by, another opportunity slipped through my fingers. I didn't have the guts. I didn't have the courage to do it. And the flip side of that is when I do have the courage to have the conversation, even if it's catastrophic, which has happened a couple times. I'm talking like business owners yelling across the room at each other, not physical violence, but very tense situations. Maybe they get mad at me. Maybe they tell me it's none of my business, right? And eventually, like I can say that there's never been the worst catastrophic thing that's ever happened is we shared a truth and they decided not to be clients anymore, right? Yeah. But they didn't leave angry or emotionally, upset. It was just kind of like, I don't think this is going to work, right? It's like, I think we are in agreement on that, and we will help you any way we can, but obviously going forward as client and consultant is not the right path. But usually there's a really positive result. I'd say there's one negative for every 20 positives. Yeah. But you come out of that experience of having been brave and you actually feel great. It's exhilarating.
I think it is for you and I.
Maybe I'm in my own head on this, but
I find that with conflict, and I call them, and you probably would share this term with me, carefrontations, right? And I've talked carefrontations over the years instead of confrontation because I care enough about you to have this conversation. Joey, you got spinach in your teeth. Why hasn't anybody told you got a big piece of spinach hanging off your front tooth? And I don't want to offend him, or oh gosh, what is he going to think if I... That leadership piece for me, it's my duty and my role and job to come to you as a fellow leader who I've invested time and energy and resources in. And again, from a resource perspective, you're paying me to help you with these things, to share that with you and having a carefrontation. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, there's times when I go into those meetings and my stomach is churning. But when I go into those meetings and I've prepared and prayed and in advance, having those carefrontations, I can think of very, very few that have just gone off the rails. I'm really trying to think of one that just went the opposite way that I expected. And 90+% of the time, I get done with those, and you know what? I come to the conclusion of, why didn't I do this sooner? And I had way more bad scenarios in my head that I played out that actually even happened. Yeah, that's what keeps most people away from having those is, oh, I know what's going to happen. That's going to happen. They're going to walk out. They're going to quit. They're going to defriend me. And most of the time, that's not the case when you approach it in the right way. Yeah. Not only is that not the case, but I mean, I could probably tell you 4 or 5 stories I could think of off the top of my head that ended with, thank you for being who you are. Thank you for being somebody who cared. Thank you for pointing that out. And then what I really appreciate is when maybe because they've had to do the same thing, I had one person say, I know that took a lot of courage. That's probably why I used courage to describe that, because it was said back to me. I know that took a lot of courage, and I appreciate it. And it's like, man, you talk about cloud 9. Like you leave those meetings and you're just walking on air. And you're like, okay, God, this is what you put me here to do. Not here at Axiom to do this kind of work. Yes, that. But here in this person's life, in this business owner's life, in this friend's life, in this guy who's struggling in his marriage life, you put me here, and I felt like you're telling me to do something. I didn't want to do it because it was going to be hard. You gave me the courage to do it, and this is what life looks like, right? This is what it's supposed to feel like. So that's pretty cool. Last thing I want to kind of talk about
going back to blind spots. So there's blind spots, right? Which is like, I literally had no idea that car was there, right? But then there's the things that the blind spot isn't that you're unaware of the thing. It's that you think the thing isn't as big a deal as it really is, right? And I learned this in C12 and I think I learned it shoulder to shoulder with you. And you may remember this day. Josie certainly does. She reminds me of it constantly because she was sitting in on my core report.
Oh, okay.
And Don Light Jr., who was my chair at the time, was looking at my core report. My core report is like my, what the last year has been like and what the plans are for the next year. And it's kind of like you undress in front of your C12 peers and they get to see the good, bad, and the ugly, right? And Don said, I finished giving this core report, right? Now it's time for member feedback. And I'm feeling really good about, how things went. And Don goes, Joey, I look at this and I just want to punch you in the nose. I was like, that's one heck of an opening. And he goes, I want to punch you in the nose because I look at all the things that you said that you wanted were important to you last year. They're not important to you because you haven't done any of them. And I knew that I was a person, in my most honest moments with myself, I knew I was a person who would commit to things but not follow through on them. And this was a propensity I had, right? And still do, by the way. This is something that I continue to have to work on. And Don Power, another good friend of ours, just says, integrity is being your word.
Yeah.
Like if you say you're going to be somewhere, be there. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Otherwise, don't say it. Like, just don't. If you don't have to, you don't have to do it if you didn't say it. But if you say it, you got to be your word. And so, like, what is the approach, and is it any different when you're coaching somebody? Like, there's a blind spot; they don't even know it's there, and you have to get them over the shock of like, oh, I'm this way, or I have this thing, and I didn't even know it, versus the thing that they kind of they know is there, but they don't think anybody else knows it there. And then you have to be like, everybody knows this is you. You're the only one that's in denial about how much this is affecting your leadership or your role as a husband or father. If you had experience like that, and how do you carefrontate? That carefrontation is better than carefrontate. That doesn't work as well. But how do you care for those people and confront them with that?
Yeah, I think there's several different ways. Again, there's probably a lot of different ways you can, but several different ways that I will approach that. One of them is using art and science, and the science of psychometrics, the science of a 360 assessment that's having other leaders who are speaking into a specific area, and having that entree really to say, through that science, now I've got the art over here. How do I use that? Is it a hammer and they're the nail? Or is it, hey, here's an opportunity for us to grow and grow in your leadership? And knowing another piece about this, Joey, is how are my leaders motivated? You're motivated very differently than James, than Angela, than Tony. These leaders, you have to, as a coach and an advisor, how is your leader across from you wired? And that helps in that carefrontation, because I know I can come in with a challenge in a much different way. And I'm thinking of two individuals right now that one is a bottom line, bottom right corner, type A driver. And if I come in, and his name is, actually there's a few Joeys, but none as unique as you. And coming in with a challenge with him. But then there's the opposite, that if I would come in with a challenge with another, they would not give up, but it would be like, boy, it's going to take a while for them to recover from that challenge. For them, it becomes, you're hurting other people. And as you're hurting other people, that motivator for them is enough for them to go, I wasn't aware of, what do I do? I'm hurting other people with this. And so I have to know that from the time I've spent with them. What are they motivated by? How do I use the tools around me to help point that out? So it's not the doctor's opinion, right? Doctors use what? X-rays,
Right.
blood tests. We're going to stick you in the tube and get you an MRI. And now I've got some resources
so
I can
good.
use.
I'm thinking of a parallel here. This is super helpful because the 5 love languages, right? One of the things that I learned from the 5 love languages is that we will often show love to our spouse, not in their love language, but in our love language.
Bingo.
So, my love language is words of affirmation. So I was really good about affirming my wife, but it didn't give me any brownie points. I was like, what?
What's
I'm
wrong here?
doing a great job.
Yeah.
And she doesn't appreciate it because her gift at the time, which the other thing I've learned is people change over time, but her gift or her love language was acts of service. And so I could affirm her all I wanted to, but I was just giving her what I wanted, right? And so this seems to me the same thing, and I've never thought about it this way, that this is something I have to get better at, is because I am kind of results-oriented, achievement-oriented, like where's the goal? Let's go tackle it together.
Right.
We can do this.
Right.
We can get this. The glass is half full. There's an opportunity for us to make lemonade out of lemons kind of thing. And that's the way I view everybody else in terms of challenges. Hey, if I have a blind spot, I want you to come challenge me, almost like challenge my manhood, right?
Exactly.
Like if you're not a man, a real man would care for his wife more, right? Be like, well, I want to be a real man, and so, but what I'm doing is the same thing I was doing with Josie, which is like, I'm speaking to her in the language that gets results for me, not the results for them.
Precisely.
So your paradigm for a lot of this, in terms of the psychometric, is the REACH ecosystem, which is the 2x2 drivers, coach, advisors, counselors, right? So I'm in that driver group, but I really so you're saying the counselors, that's this is affecting other people. What would you say for advisors? Like, what for those people who are more task oriented, less relationally driven? Like, what's the love language, so to speak, for revealing blind spots to that group?
Yeah, so that group they need to have the how question answered.
Okay.
How are we going to do that? And for them, pain points can come. It's a much smaller circle. So as you go to counselors and coaches, the circle of influence is much wider because they are so people focused.
So their blind spots are affecting a lot more people.
Right.
The advisor is probably having a direct impact on them and maybe a few people around them.
And a few people close to them. But in that how perspective, my approach then with an advisor is, how is this affecting those closest to you? And they can come at it from a perspective as well, as they're very good at listening in and finding out what's the problem here. They've got 14 reasons why this is not going to work, very naturally. And you also hear, in leadership circles, I got negative Ned, negative Nancy. I have embraced that because I have 3 advisors around me who are very important in my life, my wife being one, my executive assistant, and a director for developing people group are all 3 advisors. And I used to cringe at like the detail, Joey, that comes from these 3. It's like, and I've embraced it to say, I need this in my life. I need these advisors, but they're so focused on that who perspective and beginning to look through that lens. The other piece that reminds me of, as we're sharing about this specific piece, is the motivation of a leader, but also I do spend time in that building chemistry piece to find out. Give you, for instance, I was with a young leader last week and had to have some tough conversations. 26 years old. He's going to be getting married this fall. He was potentially in a job that's not going to work out for him, and he was treading water. And because I've known him it's about 4 years that I've had opportunity just to be pouring into him, and I know what he loves to do. He's a gym nut. Just loves working out, bodybuilder. And so guess what my metaphor is going to be when I begin to share leadership challenges with him? And one of the leadership challenges I shared with him, I said, all right, so let's say 3 months from now, you're going to be working on benching 315 pounds. And you're right now, you've only benched 225. And as you move from 225 to 315, what's necessary in the gym? And his minds go, oh, you got to do this, you got to... I'm like, you're heading into that time, okay, as a leader, but now you're going to be having a partner for life in your marriage. What did you need to do to prepare for that 225 to that 315? You're going to have to eat differently. You're going to have to be probably painful exercises, all
Sleep
these pieces, right?
Think differently, yeah.
And if I came at it from my perspective and just said, all right, from my experience, just listen up because I'm the golden child. I've gone through all this experience. I'm 57. I have all these answers. I've been married for 33 years, right? The no button, where is it? How fast can I hit the no button? As a leader, if you're watching or hearing this, please don't do that. It's not effective.
Yeah.
But it takes time, Joey, to build that again. That relational acumen and those relational deposits, I turn around and use them with clients and with leaders that God's given me influence with.
Well, maybe to wrap up, one of the things I kind of keep hearing in the subtext of everything you're sharing with me is all of this becomes so much more difficult if your ego is kind of important, is cherished by you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, why do those leaders feel like, well, I've been married 33 years. This is how you need to do it, right? Because they're proud of the way that they're basically saying, look at me, appreciate me, and learn something and be grateful.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, like, your lack of ego, I know you have one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know you're ambitious, and you've been candid and transparent with me sometimes on things that just frustrate the heck out of you, right? And a lot that frustration, you know, for me, a lot of that comes out of my ego, you know, wound up not getting acknowledged the way it needed to be. So I know you have one, but your ability to put that on the shelf, you're like, it's not about me. It's not important that he know how long I've been married.
Mm-hmm.
It's not important that I'd be able to pull out the trump card of, well, I do it this way, so you need to do it that way. What's important is that he be able to see the path that he's going to need to walk down to be successful. And if that's if that's through something I say, great, God used me. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be, he doesn't have to remember 20 years from now, oh yeah, what I did was what Doug did, right? I owe it all to Doug, right?
Right.
But I will sit here and say that approach that I've been able to experience with you over 20 years of friendship and 10 years of being under your care as a C12 member, that approach, it does get you a heck of a lot of accolades, right? Because there's just an acknowledgement of everything that you've done in my life that I tell lots of people about. And if I forget to tell them, Josie tells them. You need to go talk to Doug because, you know, Joey owes it all to him. But no, I sincerely appreciate you. And I appreciate you coming on for what I feel like is a pretty special episode. Yeah. It's a big deal for us to turn 20 and have the podcast going for a lot of that time. And so when we started talking about the next chapter, it's like, well, Doug started the book. Doug needs to open the next chapter.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the brand new podcast, and God bless it indeed.
Thank you, Doug.